Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to True Crime Wednesday. I'm your host, Lori Hellis. I'm a retired criminal attorney and the author of a true crime book on the, wrong side, on the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case. And we have a few things to talk about tonight. Mostly, I'm interested in what you would like to talk about. Um, I like to do deep dives into true crime issues. Doesn't necessarily have to be a case. It could be a question about a particular subject like indictments or bail or uh, any sort of evidence motions, any of those sort of things, because I like to take a deep dive into those questions. And so let me know if there are any aspects of the law or questions that recent cases have brought up for you that you would like me to cover. Remember, this is not legal advice. We are simply talking about cases that are in the news. Now, I just talked about this book. If you happen to have a copy of the book and you would like a book plate signed by the author, I'm happy to send you one. All you need to do is drop me an email and uh, and with your address, and I will mail you one. Um, we don't share those addresses, so your address is safe with us, but I'd be happy to send you one. So, and don't forget that we are still working on a quilt um, for Kay and Larry, Kay and Larry Woodcock, who are J.J. Vallow's parents. It is a quilt of squares that look like origami cranes, and the link to make a square is in the show notes below us. So um, there are some trials I wanted to talk about. Now I know that the trial for I keep getting his name wrong. I want to say Brandon. It's Brendan Banfield is going on. That's the nanny trial or the au pair trial. And to be honest, it just hasn't been all that exciting for me. Um, so I haven't been following it closely. Also, selection started for the D. Warner case. Dale Warner is on trial for the murder of D. Warner. That one I absolutely will be following. They're in the middle of jury selection now. There hasn't been any news about whether or not um, when they might get started. So, but there are some other cases that I wanted to talk about. One in particular that has been going on and that I have been following is the case of Kevin Ellis. That is, the victim's name is Matthew Ristelli, and his wife, Catherine Ristelli, pled guilty to murder and conspiracy to commit murder, that she conspired with her family to murder her husband, Matthew Ristelli. And she has been the prosecution's star witness. The brother, Kevin Ellis, initially, when the police arrived, Kevin Ellis was there and he claimed that Matthew Ristelli had attacked him in the foyer of his home, his mother's home where he lives, and that he had killed Matthew in self defense. He claims that Matthew came at him with a knife. However, the knife was staged next to Matthew's right hand, and Matthew is left handed. Catherine says that she conspired with the mother and the brother to lure Matt to Utah. They had been living in California. She and Matt separated. She took the children and went to Utah. She claims that they came up with a plan for her to lure Matthew back to Utah by telling him that she wanted to get back together with him and asking him to come and get her and the children. And that when he arrived, um, Catherine wasn't there, but her brother, Kevin Ellis, was, and there was an altercation during which Matthew was shot and killed. Interestingly enough, the mother, whose name is Tracy Grist, Googled the Adelson case. And right now, the defense is really going after the victim, saying he was abusive, he drank a lot, sort of painting the picture that he could have very well come after Kevin Ellis with a knife, and Ellis is claiming that it was self-defense and that he was justified in shooting Matthew Rastelli. So that case is going on. That's out of Utah, and that'll be going on. The defense is, I believe, the defense is presenting their case now. So I will be continuing to follow that one. The case out of Michigan, the D. Warner case, Dale Warner. Dee and Dale were married. It was a second marriage for Dee. I'm not sure, but it was at least a second marriage for Dale as well. Dee had confided to her children, her adult children, that she felt that that Dale was abusive. She had confided to them that he was abusive and that she felt in danger and that she wanted to get out of the marriage. And then she just disappeared. No one knew where she was. Her children couldn't find her, which was very unusual for her. Dale was no help. And ultimately, after several years, I want to say 3 years, the adult children filed an action with the court to try and have Dee declared dead so that they could deal with her estate and so that they could bring a wrongful death suit against Dale. In the meantime, her remains were located in a chemical storage tank on Dale's property. And so he was arrested and has been awaiting trial now. I think it's been at least a year. So jury selection started yesterday. There's been a lot of publicity around this case in Michigan and a lot of concern that an unbiased jury might not be able to be selected. So because the case has been so public, each side, the judge gave each side extra peremptory challenges instead of the usual. I don't know what it is there. Sometimes it's 8, 6, 8, 12, depending. But the judge allowed 18 for each side. And those are challenges that are not necessarily for cause. So when you're doing a jury selection, if you're questioning a potential juror and as I was reading in one article, the juror basically said, "I think he's guilty." That is a challenge for cause, and that doesn't go against your peremptory challenges. There can be as many cause challenges as are necessary to weed out people who might have already formed an opinion. So, that jury selection is going to go on. There's no telling how long that jury selection is going to take, but it wouldn't be unusual for it to take all week to seat a full jury with alternates. So, and I did want to talk a little bit about Lexi Treviso. Now, you may remember this case. It was all over the news in May in 2023. This was a young woman. She was 18. but still in high school, came to the hospital complaining of a terrible backache, complaining that she was in awful pain. And, oh, trigger warning. I forget to say that. Thank you, Jen. She came to the hospital, reported that she was in a lot of pain. They were doing tests. They did a pregnancy test, and the pregnancy test came back positive. Um, but the nurse was actually on her way in to talk to her about the positive test. When Lexi said she had to go to the restroom, she went rushing down the hall to a hallway restroom and was in there for quite a while. And she came out, and then not very long afterwards, a nurse went in. The restroom was a mess. There was a lot of blood, and they found a baby in a full-term baby boy in the trash can. The baby was not able to be resuscitated. She was charged, but her defense attorney filed uh, motions to suppress in the case because during the period of time that she was talking, when they came down, the hospital officials came down and confronted her and said they'd found a baby. She then gave essentially a confession, and that she actually had given birth in the bathroom. And the police were there, but also her doctors were there, the medical staff were there. So her attorneys filed a motion to suppress, and in fact, the court said that her conversations were protected by doctor-patient privilege, and that the police should not have been in the room when that conversation was going on. And the court threw out the confession and all of the fruit of the poisonous tree that that was information that was developed based on her admission. And that ruling went all the way to the New Mexico Supreme Court, and the New Mexico Supreme Court upheld it. Without her confession, it's something somewhat impossible to prove that that there is discussion about whether or not the baby was alive when born, and she later recanted and said that the baby wasn't alive. So the Supreme Court said that her earlier admissions had to be thrown out, and so the state dismissed the charges against her, and there have been no new charges brought against her. The interesting thing, um, the baby was found in a garbage can. Um, there were trash can liners, like extra liners in the bottom of the can. And so the baby was put in the garbage can, and then the liner with all the trash in it was put over the top. So when the housekeeping folks went in and they pulled the trash liner out with the trash in it, the baby was in the trash can. It is unclear. The coroner said that there was evidence that the baby had suffocated, and in fact, that the baby had been born alive. That was the medical examiner's opinion. Um, she claims that the baby was not alive. So, but what the interesting thing is that in the meantime, her attorney has filed a wrongful death suit against the hospital, claiming that it was the medications that they gave Lexi for pain before they got the positive pregnancy test that were responsible for the baby's death. There's also the possibility, although I wasn't able to find it, there's been some discussion about possible also a possible civil rights case, claiming that her civil rights were violated because the police were in the room at the time that she was um, getting medical treatment, and that her civil rights were violated because the police were there when she was having doctor-patient protected conversations. So that's sort of an interesting legal twist on that case. So we'll keep an eye on that to see what happens. I think it's sort of interesting that now the hospital is being sued for wrongful death, and there is there is the possibility of also uh, a civil rights action. So uh, things that make you go, hmm. The next case I wanted to talk about is Sarah Grace Patrick. We've talked a lot recently about minors and minors being tried as adults. We had Derek Rosa. Sorry, just kind of have a dry throat tonight. We had Derek Rosa. We've had a couple of other cases where we've had minors that were charged as adults. So we talked last time about hang on, I'm looking for my notes. We talked last time about Derek Rosa, and we talked about the Roper case, and that in some states, um, someone being that covers someone being tried as an adult, and how young people, especially younger teens, are should be treated differently, and about the Supreme Court case that said that um, people under 18 could not be sentenced to death, even if they were being tried as adults. So, um, the thing about Sarah Grace Patrick is she was 16 at the time of the incident. Um, she claims that she woke up and found her mother and stepfather had been shot. Her 5-year-old sister actually found them, alerted Sarah Grace Patrick, who called 911. Several months went by, um, and she was later arrested for the murder of her mother and her stepfather. There's very little from what we've seen in the public. There seems to be very little concrete evidence that she was responsible, other than the fact that her behavior was, some people found her behavior unusual, and she was very much on TikTok and on social media. However, at least one family member says that 2 weeks before their murder, a quote, family friend had been at the house and held the mother and the stepfather at gunpoint. It's evident from what's been going on and what we've heard so far that this was a family that was in could potentially have been involved in some unsavory business. There's a lot of talk about the fact that the stepfather and the mother were um, involved in drug world, and they may have had some drug connections. And there's a lot of discussion about whether or not this crime actually was committed by someone who had a beef with them because of their involvement in drugs. Nonetheless, Sarah Grace Patrick, who is now 17, she was arrested and she has been in solitary confinement for a year. We know from the Richard Allen case that solitary confinement for extended periods is not conducive to a prisoner's mental health, whether they are 16 or whether they are experienced adults. So she this just this week her attorneys asked for a new bond hearing for her because her trial was delayed, and that was enough for them to come back and ask for a bond, and the bond was denied. I watched the bond hearing, and what I will say is that it is one thing to have family members come to court, um, to express their concern to the judge, but it is another for a judge to allow family member after family member to come up and give what really amounted to victim impact statements. I thought it was very inappropriate. Was not a proper argument for bond. And, it boiled down to members of Sarah Grace Patrick's mother's family who are supporting her, including her very supportive grandfather, who believed that she could not have been involved in this, against the stepfather's family, who believe that she's the devil. So I think it's concerning that we have someone who was 16 at the time of the mother and stepfather's deaths, and who's been held in solitary confinement for more than a year, and now is going to continue to be held because her trial has been postponed and now is scheduled for August 3rd of this year. So she has several more months, what is that, 6 months to wait in solitary. And she is in the typical 23 and 1 schedule where she is locked down 23 hours a day and she is let out of her cell 1 hour a day, possibly for recreation. But it also can be that 1 hour is also used for showers and medical and all of those other things. So, um, and that case is in Georgia. So I will be following that one closely. Cases that involve juveniles are always of more interest to me. Um, you all know that I did a lot of juvenile work while I was practicing, so that one is of particular interest to me. And I I I can't say that I know enough about the case to have formed an opinion about her guilt or innocence. But from what I've heard so far in what's been made public, I think their case is fairly thin. So I'm concerned about that. Um, the next case I wanted to talk about is Lindsay Clancy. Lindsay Clancy is the Massachusetts mother who has been charged with the murder of her 3 children. She's also the woman who jumped out of a second-story window in an unaliving attempt, and she is now paralyzed from the sternum down. We saw some court hearings happen a couple, 3 weeks ago, where her attorneys were coming to court wanting the court to put specific orders in place for her transportation and her care when she's in the courthouse. Her trial is scheduled to start on July 20th, and is expected to run at least 4 weeks, could be significantly longer if, in fact, um, they have to shorten the court days because of her health. She's in very fragile health, both mentally and physically, and so we saw the hearing where the court was trying to determine what her needs would be in the courthouse, and her attorneys were advocating for much more care while she is in court than the prosecution was. The prosecution basically said, "Oh, she's fine. They can put her in a wheelchair and she can come to court." And it became very evident from what the defense presented the court that that wasn't a fair assessment of what she was going to need, and that her needs were a lot more profound than that. What Interestingly, what has happened this week is that her attorneys have filed a malpractice suit against medical providers, and they are saying that the medical providers failed to properly diagnose Lindsay with her severe postpartum psychiatric condition. So we've talked about these cases before. This is only the most recent of these cases, where a mother has severe postpartum. It goes beyond simply postpartum depression. Uh, the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case is another case involving postpartum mental health issues, but it moves beyond the typical thing our grandma used to call the baby blues, and into something that is postpartum psychosis, where the person has actually had um, a psychotic break and is delusional. So they have now brought a medical malpractice suit against her care providers, claiming that they failed to properly diagnose and medicate her for her severe postpartum um, psychiatric condition. So her case goes to trial on July 20th. Tiffany Adams, the the Oklahoma case of the ultimate toxic grandmother. She was the mastermind in a murder that included the mother of her grandchildren, as well as a woman who was a volunteer to supervise court-ordered visitation. So she pled guilty. There were 5 co-defendants. 2 of them pled guilty before the preliminary hearings and turned on the other 3. Then Tiffany Adams, who was set for a pretrial late last year, she was set for a pretrial to set a trial date, and they asked to change that to a change of plea, and she entered a plea. She is due to be sentenced tomorrow. Actually, she was due to be sentenced today, and I have not seen anything yet about her sentencing. I was thinking it was tomorrow, but she was scheduled for sentencing today. I haven't seen an update on that, but as soon as we get one, we'll let you know. Barry Morphew, his trial date has been set. He's out on bond, and his trial date, there were weeks and weeks and weeks that his attorneys started saying they had not had enough time to go through the discovery in the case, and so they couldn't appropriately advise him on whether or not to take a plea, whether or not to set the case for trial. And so the judge finally put their foot down and said, January 12th, you have to make a decision. And so he entered a not guilty plea, and that trial has been set for October 13th of this year. So we perhaps will finally, Suzanne Morphew will, um, uh, Barry Morphew will get his day in court, and Suzanne Morphew will get justice. Um, So, a couple of people asked me about Kimberly Sullivan. She is the woman who held her adult stepson captive in Connecticut. Her next hearing, oh, that's where I got confused. Her next hearing is tomorrow. Um, the judge ordered all of the discovery to be exchanged so that the state could make a plea offer. She and her defense attorneys insisted that they needed the victim's new name and location, and the judge agreed that they had a right to that, even though he felt like he was not safe. The judge did not. She also asked to be relieved of the GPS monitor. She's out on $300,000 in bond and living with her daughter, I believe. And the judge refused to remove the GPS monitor. So that at least was good that um, she has to account for where she is since the defense was given the information about what the adult son, um, that he had changed his name. So he was found living in her home. He's the young man who set a fire in his bedroom in order to get the fire department to come so that he could be rescued. And at the time, he weighed something around 68 pounds. He was an adult. Um, so she has been charged with multiple counts of kidnapping and abuse of an adult, and all there's about 6 or 7 different crimes that she has been charged with. But so far, they have not set a trial date. So, and then of course we have Mickey Steins out of Kentucky. And this is another one that I am having a really hard time finding information on. Um, this is the sheriff who shot the judge. Um, the they apparently had been longtime friends, and there's video of the sheriff walking into the judge's chambers and shooting him. There's also some very troubling body cam footage that has been released that appears to show Sheriff Steins as being quite delusional, being very paranoid, being worried that the officers are going to shoot him, worried that the officers are that he's not safe with them, and so I I think it's clear that his attorneys are going to be bringing some sort of mental health defense. But what's happened recently is that a special judge whose name is Christopher Coran was appointed to the case, and the defense has now filed a motion to recuse this special judge. They asked the Kentucky Supreme Court to remove this appointed judge because they said that he sat next to the victim, Judge Mullins, at a judicial conference just the week before the shooting. And they felt that might sway his opinion. And the Supreme Court came back and said the law requires that this judge, the appointed judge, Judge Coran, have the opportunity to review and recuse himself before the Supreme Court would make a decision. So that was referred back to Judge Coran. But I have not been able to find his next court date. And it seems to me that they're playing a little bit cagey on that when it comes to the media. So I did go in and search Kentucky court documents, and I wasn't able to get far enough in to be able to find out when the next court date is. So those were all the cases I want to talk about. But one of the things I wanted to ask, the last couple of episodes, we've done some deep dives. We talked about anti-SLAPP legislation or laws. We talked a bit at different times about um, domestic violence and stalking and domestic violence restraining orders. So I'm wondering if there are things that you all would like to talk about or would like to hear me talk about that amount to sort of getting into a deep dive or getting into the weeds about a particular subject. It could be preliminary hearings versus in grand juries. It um, could be any of the rules of evidence, how a motion to suppress works, how bail works. I'm open to answering those kind of questions. So let me know either in the comments or by email what it is you guys would like to talk about. Um, as I say, there are a couple of cases that I plan to cover and to follow closely. One of them is Dale Warner. The other one is Corey Richins. Corey Richins is coming up in just a couple weeks. And from all outward appearances, that is going to go to trial. We also know that one is going to be live streamed. I have not gotten a clear uh, uh, understanding of whether or not Dale Warner's case is going to be live streamed. So still waiting to see if I can figure that out. So while while Jen sort of rounds up questions, y'all let me know. Please put Q's or question marks in the or type the word question in your questions to just let me know what is so that they show up for Jen. There is a case. There is a civil case going on that you all might be interested in, but I also don't want to be accused of continuing to um, go after Lauren Matthias. There are a lot of creators online who are doing that. But there is a civil case going on, doesn't have anything to do with Lauren. She is not named as a defendant, but it involves her family, her brother Pace, who is a lawyer, and his law firm, her father. And there just have been some interesting developments, like them avoiding service and jumping in cars and rushing away to avoid service on this case. It is a civil federal RICO case having to do with mortgage fraud uh, and and stuff around that that subject. Um, and it's pretty interesting. It also involves Lauren's father, Jameis, who was disbarred because of similar behavior and who actually served time in federal prison for mortgage fraud and wire fraud. So, if you're interested in that, I'm happy to cover it. There are other people who are covering it. There are some interesting legal issues that have come up, things like service, and yeah, it is in Utah, but it's in federal court. So, but arising out of Utah. Um, if you're interested, I'll look into it. If you're not and you're tired of dealing with all of that, just let me know. Um, you know, well, hi, Cappy Cavy. Well, you can and you can't. Um, you can do things like not answer the door. The process server attempted to serve him, Pace Johnson, the brother, at his place of business. And a lot of the other people who are involved are also um, employed by that law firm. And uh, this is the part I don't know because I haven't dug into Utah law. But in most jurisdictions, and I haven't dug into the federal rules of civil procedure on service because I didn't practice federal law in federal court. But um, there in many states, my home state in of Oregon included, you can serve someone at their usual place of business, and you can also serve them by substitute service in some situations. So you can serve another adult at their residence. So I haven't looked into this completely because they filed motions to quash the case because service hadn't been perfected. And the reason was that they're all doing everything they can to avoid being served. So they're not showing up at the door. They're filing motions saying this wasn't proper service because you didn't serve me at my residence, you served me at my business. So they're actively doing everything they can to avoid this lawsuit being filed. So, or proceeding. The suit's been filed, but the person who's filed the suit is acting pro se, but he appears to have a lot of either he has a lot of legal background or he has a lawyer advising him because he seems pretty savvy uh, to what is going on. And once again, it is the same things that Lauren's dad went to prison for in, I want to say 2015, but I could be off on that. It is mortgage fraud um, and wire fraud. So, um, so let me know if you're interested in that, if you're interested in me doing a deep dive into federal service and those sort of things. If you're not, I'm okay with that too. Um, I just thought there are things that make you go, hmm. So, Mac Q77. How is it a Ramsey grand juror can tell that they voted a true bill against the Ramseys? I thought talking about deliberations was not okay. It is true that what happens in a grand jury is secret. Um, I don't know about this particular juror, but to be honest, I think there may very well be a statute of limitations on prosecuting someone for leaking information from a grand jury. Um, I don't know for sure. That's a really good question, and I'm going to do some research on it. So I'm making a note because that is a good question. Um, so there was a grand juror who now says they voted a true bill. And that's kind of interesting because hang on, I can't write and talk at the same time. The older I get, the less I can multitask. It's interesting because why wouldn't the prosecutor then file the case if in fact the grand jury brought it back a true bill? I mean, the prosecutor goes to the grand jury and presents the case. If the prosecutor presents the case and the grand jury comes back and says, "Yes, we believe that there's probable cause to believe this person committed this crime." That's what the grand jury decides. It's not a very high bar. If the grand jury came back and issued a true bill, why would the prosecutor then not file a case? It doesn't make any sense. Why would the prosecutor go to all the trouble of presenting it to a grand jury, convening a grand jury, presenting all the facts to the grand jury, getting a true bill, and then deciding not to file a case? Not sure that makes a lot of sense, but it's been years since I talked about the JonBenet Ramsey case, and I don't have a really clear recollection of all of the political stuff that was going on at the time. So maybe it's something we can look into together, and I will check. Thank you, because this always bothered me that this grand jury spoke out. Well, I think it's a good question. It could be that the prosecution just decided not to go after the grand jury. I mean, eh, it's not automatic. It's not, it's something somebody has to trigger. So, the prosecution may have decided that it simply wasn't worth it to go after the grand juror. Um, but I mean, the whole idea that the grand jury came back with a true bill and the prosecutor decided not to file it is odd. So, I mean, it kind of goes counter to what prosecutors' jobs are. So, so I'll look into it. So, what else you got for me tonight? Rogue Koala. I believe it was our own Tiff who pointed out that ED gets more attention than postpartum depression and psychosis. It is infuriating. I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, we've had more research about erectile dysfunction than we ever had about postpartum mental health issues. Um, you know, I mean, I don't always talk about my personal experience, but I had a bit of a personal experience with postpartum, and it came upon me absolutely out of the blue. I think one of the things is that it is often unexpected. You don't expect it to be that difficult. Um, and there's a lot to it. It's not just your body chemistry, but the fact that you've got a brand new baby and you're exhausted, and it all sort of builds up. And if you are a person who already has some underlying mental health issues, it can be very difficult. But I want to point out that there are moms who have no underlying mental health conditions and who deliver a baby and discover how profound the chemical imbalance becomes in their brain, and how profound postpartum mental health issues can be. I don't like to just call it postpartum depression because that underplays, I think, the impact that it can have in some families. In my own town, several years ago, we had a case where a man came home and found that his wife had shot and killed two of their three children. One of them was shot and survived, and then shot herself. And one of those children was a new baby. And it was very clear that she was suffering from profound postpartum mental health issues. So these are all really good questions. Hey, Lori Phillips, welcome. Thanks for catching our live. I have lots of folks on the replay crew, and I appreciate all of you. But Lori's post reminds me, please, if you have not yet, hit the like button. If you're not a member, please subscribe because it just helps with the algorithm. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. And please hit the thumbs up. Um, Before we take our next question, I also want to let everybody know that I am diligently working on the Patreon series on toxic grannies and granny crafts. And I'm having to learn a whole bunch of new things like video creation and video editing and all kinds of new things so that I can share them all with you. And so I'm working diligently, and I hope in the very near future, we're going to have some Patreon episodes up about toxic grannies. The first one I'm working on, as you might assume, is Donna Sue Adelson. But we also have Angela Wagner for the Piketon, the Piketon massacre case. We talked about Tiffany Adams today. She's on my list, and there's several other, including Mama Restelli. So there are quite a few other cases that we need to talk about when it comes to toxic grannies. So I'm working on it, and I hope I'm going to have something ready for you quite soon. And it will be offered on Patreon, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think we get to let our hair down a little bit and learn some granny skills while we talk about bad grannies. Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Yes, Children of Darkness and Light. That is my book. Please, if you have read it, in addition to letting me know you would like a signed book plate, please drop a review on Amazon or on any of your favorite book websites. So I appreciate that. Um, Hello, 13608 Cherie. Have you heard any of Zach Adams' post-conviction hearings? It's another case of epic shadiness by the prosecution and law enforcement. Zach was convicted in Tennessee of the murder of Holly Bobo. I had heard that the post-conviction hearing was going on, but I hadn't listened to any of it. But I know um, Bob and Ali Motto were covering it, so I am interested in looking into it, and I will make myself a note um, to do a little bit more digging on that. We do know that Richard Allen's appeal, the defense appeal, has been submitted, and we are waiting for the prosecution's appellate brief to be filed. So once that is filed, I was off having knee replacement surgery when the defense filed their brief, and there were a lot of people who were covering it. So I didn't really want to go back and cover that over again for all of you once I was back to doing lives again. But we definitely will cover the prosecution's brief when it is filed. Yeah. Defense Diaries podcasts with Bob and Ali Mata. They're absolutely wonderful folks. And I know that they have been covering Zach Adams and Holly Bobo. They have also been covering Aaron Spencer. Aaron Spencer is the father who um, shot the man who had kidnapped his daughter. It's a really sad story. He is a returning veteran. He had a young daughter who older man in his 60s had um, essayed, and he was charged, reported, charged, was out on bail when he kidnapped the same girl. And Aaron Spencer followed in his truck. He was talking to the police. There was an altercation, and he shot um, the abuser. And he is going to be going to trial fairly shortly. And I don't have that one on my trial list. So I will make sure that we are up to date on that one as well. But Bob and Allie have been following that very carefully. In fact, I believe they're planning to attend the trial, both of them. Bob was at Richard Allen's trial, and I believe that he is planning to um, attend that. In fact, I saw a quick little live that they did where they were on the road coming back from one of those hearings. Uh, and there was a big development in that case because, in a very rare occurrence, the judge was dismissed. It was found to have been biased, and was dismissed, and her decision not to live stream the trial was reversed. So it does appear that that trial is going to be live streamed as well. So we'll be following that one. So let me know if there are other cases that you would like me to dig into or that you would like me to follow that are coming up. I'm always interested in what interests you. So do let me know. My Patreon is not up and running yet. It'll be up and running when we post our first episode. So believe me, it will be announced. It'll be announced in our Facebook group and it'll be announced on our community page as soon as it is up and running because I think it's going to be a blast. We're going to quilt, we're going to crochet, we're going to bake, we're going to do all sorts of fun things. We're going to learn new granny skills while we talk about really bad grannies. Hi, Googie 0307. At first, I thought that said Google, but it's Googie. And if I had to guess, I'll bet that that is a nickname for a grandma. Are you following the Charlie Kirk case and the recent concern with the prosecution needing to step down as his son was a witness to the shooting, turned his head, but he was there? I saw a little news blurb about that, but I haven't followed it very closely, but I will make a note and we can talk about that next time. So, because I think that's an interesting case. Are you watching the John Paul Miller preacher who has suspicious deaths? Now, new wife, husband's drowned, deaths all around him. Yeah, this guy's kind of another Chad Daybell. He's definitely got a following within his sort of evangelical church. Um, I think there have been a lot of suggestions that his first wife, um, she supposedly unalived herself. And there have been a lot of suspicions that her death may not have been, may have been something else. And now he's married a woman that he apparently was involved had been involved with for quite some time and her husband drowned. Um, and yeah, I think that there's some really suspicious goings on in that case. There were several people who were following it very closely before sort of the final medical examiner determined that his wife uh, had taken her own life. Um, but I think it uh, I think there's some very suspicious circumstances around both of those deaths. So, thank you, Polly, for that question. Nice to see you here. Hi, Tiff. Yeah, right. Micah was his second wife, and the saddest part about Micah Miller was that he started grooming her when she was a teenager, and had an inappropriate relationship with her um, as her pastor, and then married her, and uh, and now he's moved on to wife number 3. So yeah, definitely a serial marrier, a serial husband. I don't know about the rest yet. So good questions, though. Another great book. Oh, thank you. Yes, it's the other one. It's up here on the shelf too. It's the No Nonsense Guide to Divorce. It is a very tongue in cheek, um, but giving some solid advice if you happen to be going through a divorce. Um, I wrote it sort of pointed direction directed toward millennials. So it's a little irreverent, but it has a lot of really good, solid advice for what to do if you happen to be getting divorced. So thank you, Jen. So, what else do we have to talk about? Are you and Jolene get? I think what you're trying to ask is whether or not Jolene Lunzer and I are going to get together. She has reached out to me, and we've been chatting about doing a collaboration about my coming on her show. She is so darn funny, and have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know her. What little I have been getting to know her over text and instant messaging. So, boy, I'm starting to sound people are gonna say I sound drunk. Um, so I hope that we're going to be able to do something soon because I think that would be a blast. When she was on her show and said I was her girl crush, I laughed and said, "Oh, well, it's a mutual crush, and I'd even sit on your bookcase." So we'll see. I don't have a bookcase back here to sit on, but I think it would be a blast to do it. She's a funny, funny lady. So thanks for asking. Once again, once we have something set up, you'll all know. My appearance with Hella and Dolly kind of came about a little bit quickly. We didn't have as much opportunity to let everybody know, but I guarantee that we will let you know when once we have a date and time set up. So, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my visit with Hella and Dolly, and I would love it if they would invite me back because I enjoyed chatting with them. And Hella said she might just do that when there were other cases on the horizon that she might be interested in having me on for. So look for those collaborations. What I really love about the YouTube community and especially the LawTube community is how accepting and how supportive people are of one another. Whether it's Gigi or uh, Defense Diaries or Joel Waldman or, everybody has been very supportive of one another and we're all coming at this from slightly different angles. We're all different personalities. People enjoy things that one of us offers that maybe the others don't. And, for the most part, the community has been very supportive and very collaborative. I think we all sort of come at it from the idea that there is enough to go around for everyone. This is not an economy of scarcity, and that we all have something to offer. And the rising tide raises all boats. So I'm happy that that is where we're at. And I have to say that I think that it is the unusual creator who goes the other way and sees everybody as competition because I just don't see it that way. And I think that most of the people who I follow and who I enjoy and have enjoyed getting to know are people who share that the idea that there's plenty of room for all of us. So uh, I I am looking forward to collaborating with Jolene. I haven't seen much of Gigi. I'm sure that she is broadcasting. I just haven't had the opportunity to dip in on her feed. But I do need to text her and just check in and see how she's doing. Um, I know that her son has graduated from high school this year and become a firefighter, and he has been involved in I think sort of an Explorer Scout program early on. eh, got his EMT certifications while he was still in high school, and so proud of her and her family. And so he's now living the dream out saving lives. That's exciting for him. So, what else y'all want to talk about? I was telling Gigi though, when I talked to her not too long ago, that you know those days go by so fast now. Two of her three kids are graduated from high school, and her youngest is on her way, and that time just goes so fast. Seems like you just blink and they're grown up and getting married. So, let me know if you have other things that you would like to chat about. So, let's say last call for questions. Do remember, if you are a quilter and would like to make a crane square for Kay and Larry, I'll remember next time to show you a picture so that you can envision what the squares look like. But it's a foundation piece, paper pieced pattern, and the square finishes 6 1/4 with the seam allowance. So any color is fine with a black background. So, so let me know if there are other things that you want to talk about. What am I seeing? Tiff, Gavin Fish. So Tiff, say more so we can see. Um, and definitely email questions. We have a new email address, which I am working on. The info at Lori Vallow, the Lori Vallow story still works as well. This email, my IT guy is working on. You start to you get a new email, and the first thing they want to do is want you to sign up for Google Workplace, and then Workplace doesn't work. And anyway, so my IT guy is working on it. And but if you have trouble with that email, please use the old email as well, and that is info at thelorivallowstory.com. Oh, Gavin Fish is another nice YouTube creator. Yes, he is. I'm I'm glad that you clarified that. Yes, he is another very nice YouTube creator. Yeah. So, well, last call for questions. Oh, hello, Eat the Food, Tina. Plans for the Daybell property. I haven't talked with the buyer recently. I'll reach out and find out. It's wintertime there. Y'all know the ground is frozen until May at least. One of the reasons why they didn't do the search in Daybell's backyard until early June was because the ground was still frozen. So any sort of work has to be done in kind of a short season. And like I say, I haven't talked to her recently, but I will reach out and find out whether there are any definitive plans. Um, I know that their biggest um, their biggest goal was to clear the property. It was clear that the house, which was not in very good condition, um, I I I would go as far as to say it was in pretty poor condition. Um, and it definitely was sort of an attractive nuisance. They really didn't want people going in there and out of curiosity. So they took all the buildings down off the property. So it is just bare property. At the request of Kay and Larry, they also removed the tree next to the retention pond, where JJ was buried. So it's all been taken out and the property is just there, and until some decisions are made about what to do with it. But these folks have really good intentions. They are people who live in the area, and it's important to them that the neighborhood is that this place becomes a place for people to come as a community rather than being turned into some weird true crime destination. So, last call for questions. Yes, don't forget we have a Facebook group that we post to, and that we definitely we post when I send out a new newsletter. I've recently sent out 2 newsletters, deep dives into legal subjects, and I'm happy to hear from you if there are other things that you would like me to dive into and cover in an in-depth way. We don't get really in depth here. We do sometimes. We pick a subject like anti-SLAPP laws, and we talk about those. But if you really want a real legal analysis when it comes to a certain subject, the newsletter is the place to go. There is a there is an archive, and one of the things my IT guy is doing is moving the archive from the site that we had for when I was writing the book um, on the Vallow case. We're moving that archive over to the chasingjustice.com website. So that's all kind of under construction right now. But you will have access to the archive of all of the newsletters I've written so far. And if you if you would like to subscribe, the subscription button at this point is still on the LoriVallowStory.com. But in the next week or two, I am hoping that we will have all of that overhaul done. You know, it's the new year and we're starting new things. And so that means a little bit of IT overhaul. And believe me, it needed attention. So we will get that cleaned up and cleared up. And, uh, and there we go. And then we will have everything all in one place under the Chasing Justice website. So, you know, as I've gone along and your interest and my interest has gone beyond the Vallow Daybell story, we needed a new home for all of that. So look for that coming soon. And look for the announcements as soon as we get the first episode, as soon as I get the first episode fully edited and ready to go out on Patreon. I am hoping against hope that is going to be in the next week. So, uh, unless my brain explodes from learning all these new things. So, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Y'all are the best community ever. And I'm really glad to see all my familiar faces in the chat. So thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for joining me. I think we have a really fun year ahead of us, and I am looking forward to it. As I always say, we have the best chat ever. And thank you, Jen, for being the best moderator ever. So I am going to say good night. If you have other questions we didn't get to, please drop them in the comments or drop them in an email. And have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Good night.